One of your largest assignments for the semester is going to be your final research paper, and there are a number of smaller assignments that go together to help you build up to the final paper, but this video will sort of go over the expectations of that final project. So at the top here of your guidelines page, you can see that a proposal is due in February 19th. You're going to have to do a thesis and theme development statement due February 26th. There's also a preliminary bibliography due the same day. And then the final bibliography and paper are due March 4th, as is a final video presentation, which I will be going over in a separate video. The paper itself is not that long, only 4 to 5 pages, double-spaced, but it should be a comprehensive research paper. So if you're not accustomed to writing research papers, I have really structured a lot of assignments into the semester to help you build up to writing one. But if you're still not sure what you're doing, please reach out. I'd be happy to go over it more specifically as you develop a topic. You will be writing about specific works of art and then incorporating research into an analysis of those works of art. And there are several topics I've selected that each have a question that goes along with them. I'm hoping that only about 4 to 5 students will pick each topic, mostly just because there's only so much research out there, and I also don't want to read exactly the same paper over and over again. However, if a topic that you really want to write about is already full, talk to me about it beforehand. On the other side, if there's a topic that you would really like to write about that is not part of the list, just run it by me. I probably will say yes, but I would like to talk about it before we decide on that. In your proposal, you're going to have to write a pretty clear thesis statement, and there is an assignment also this week on how to assess the value of scholarly research so that you can sort of put together the correct process for figuring out this paper. There's also coming up a practice writing a thesis statement. So there are assignments here to help you as you work towards your own thesis statement. But if you're struggling, please, again, reach out. I'm always happy to help with those sorts of things. Think of this as a pretty typically written paper. There's an introduction, there's a body, and there's a conclusion. The introduction is where your thesis should go. That's where you really want to tell me what it is you're going to be writing about. And you want to be specific. How are you answering the question that you're responding to? And what evidence are you going to talk about throughout the paper that will support that? So be very specific in that first paragraph. And then the following ones should back up and go through the research that you've indicated you're going to discuss. And then your conclusion shouldn't just be a reiteration of what you've already said. It should kind of sum it up together into a solid point at the end of the paper. There are several research guides that I have incorporated for you. So in particular, there's the LaSalle University Art History Writing Guide, which is available on Canvas for you. And then some of the other resources that I've built in as part of your weekly assignments. I am a stickler for grammar, punctuation, spelling, as well as making sure the paper really flows together. So please edit your papers. Do not just give me the first draft that you've written. Reread it. Make sure it makes sense. Maybe have somebody else read it for you. Make sure they think it makes sense. I get very distracted by poor grammar and punctuation and spelling, and that will take away from whatever points you're actually making in your paper. So please make sure that that's something you pay attention to. I also want to mention that this is not a biographical paper. None of these questions ask you to talk about the biography of the artists that created them. It is a stylistic comparison, which we will be doing throughout the semester. So you actually have one that you're doing this week to kind of give you an idea of what that means. So just remember that I do not need a paper filled with biographical information. That is stuff I can read on my own. I want to hear how you can respond to a question in an analytical capacity. The final papers, as I mentioned earlier, are due on March 4th. They're going to be submitted to Canvas. However, if you have any trouble for any reason, just send me an email with an attachment to it, and I'll make sure that I accept it that way. There will also be a video presentation, not too long, where you'll essentially talk about the main points of your paper, your thesis, and the arguments that you make. Both of these are required to get full credit, although they will show up as separate grades for you. The bibliography you're writing for the paper is going to be in MLA format. So if you're not used to MLA, especially if you're in the sciences or the business department, you may not be familiar with it. So there is an example of it in the Art History Writing Guide, but there are also activities that I've worked on to help you figure out how to do it. Wikipedia, I just like to say, may not be used as a source. If I see that in your sources, I will not accept it. But I would like to say beyond that, that you should not be using encyclopedias in general as scholarly sources. Those are kind of frame of references. They can maybe help you figure out, if you don't know what your topic is about, they might help you give a little more information about them, but they are not scholarly sources. They're not thoroughly researched. They're not making any greater point about the information that you're reading. It's really just information that you could read in any different source. So when you do the assignment that helps you understand scholarly sources, hopefully that will make it clearer, but make sure that you are using your library as a resource. And I do not necessarily mean that you have to spend hours in the library. I encourage you, if you can make it on campus, to go to the library, but there are also plenty of resources available through the library's website that will be really valuable to you. So I would suggest that you go to the library's website and use the summon search feature on their homepage. That'll help you find articles, books, and look for things that are available online. There are a lot of books that are now digitally available. And I encourage you to look for books as the best resource to start with, over articles, even though articles are also good. But books are going to give you a broader range of information. So an article is written from a very specific perspective. So think about how your own papers are going to be answering a particular question and giving a particular thesis. That is what an article does. But a book is probably going to cover a much wider range of subjects. And so instead of having one particular thesis, there might be several, and there might be different perspectives offered throughout, especially if the book is written by multiple people. So try for books first. Once you have one or two solid books, then you can move on to try to figure out what articles might be useful for you. And there are a number of sources that are available for articles. ArtStore is a good one. JSTOR is a good one. But you can look through ProQuest, LexisNexis. Again, the summon search will help you find some of the best articles. And get creative with your search terms. Don't just look for the name of the painting that you're talking about. Don't just look for the artist name. Get a little crazy out there. If you're talking about Cubism, talk about Picasso and Cubism. Talk about synthetic Cubism or analytic Cubism. So make sure that you're getting creative so that you're getting different types of results when you do your search. You need to have 4 to 5 scholarly sources. You're welcome to use more. That would be great. But make sure you at least have 4 to 5. Paper should be Times New Roman or Arial, 12-point font, double-spaced, standard margins. You do not need to have a cover page. That's just a waste of space, especially for something you're turning in digitally. Just put your information, your name, etc., into a header or a footer. Your bibliography should be attached at the end, but just please note that they do not count towards the overall page count. The same is true if you put images in there. Put images at the end because, again, they don't count for the page count. When you're writing, titles of works of art should be italicized or placed in quotations. Similarly, if you were talking about an artist, you can either refer to them by their full name or their last name. Don't refer to them by their first name. So, for example, if you're talking about Pablo Picasso, don't call him Pablo. He's Picasso. Let's see. I have a zero tolerance policy for plagiarism. So if you are writing your own work and you're citing things that you have put into your paper correctly, then you will be fine. But if I find that you have plagiarized, you will get a 0 for the assignment. If I think it's serious enough, I may take it to the university. So please make sure that you really understand how to properly cite your works. I do want to caution you, though, that just because you're trying to not plagiarize does not mean your entire paper should be a quotation. You want to make sure that when necessary and when possible, you are rephrasing in your own words, paraphrasing. If it is a really valuable piece of information and the way the author has said it is the best way to say that same thing, put it in a quote. But your quotes should be a sentence or two at the most. They shouldn't be whole paragraphs. So make sure that most of the paper is written in your own voice, in your own words. So the last thing I want to do is just go through the different topics. I'm not going to go too deeply into them, but I want to show you the images. And then if you have questions, you can reach out to me to talk about them. So the first one is a comparison of Jean-Auguste Renoir's Moulin de la Galette and Georges Seurat's Sunday Afternoon on the Grand Jatte. Explore the way Seurat's exacting pointillism affects the liveliness of his image in comparison to Renoir's Impressionism. So this is Renoir's Moulin de la Galette, it is an impressionist painting. It is a very loose brush style, versus Seurat's Sunday Afternoon on the Island of the Grand Jatte, which is a pointillist piece. So you're essentially trying to do a comparison between pointillism and impressionism here. They are both sort of social scenes. What's the difference in the two approaches? What does one have that the other doesn't? What's lost in one style versus another style? What's gained, etc. The second one is about Picasso. So comparing two of his different works, the portrait of Ambroise Vollard to Demoiselle d'Avignon. Each image is an example of cubism, but represent different styles of cubism. Discuss the distinction between analytic and synthetic cubism using details from the images. So this is the portrait of Ambroise Vollard. This is an analytic cubist piece that comes early in Picasso's exploration of cubism. And this is the Demoiselles d'Avignon, or the Ladies of Avignon, which is a synthetic cubist piece and comes much later. So you're comparing the two styles and the way that Picasso's style has changed between these two different periods in cubism. Third one, using the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, Turkey, and Chartres Cathedral in Chartres, France, compare Byzantine Orthodox Church architecture and decoration to Gothic architecture and decoration. Explore how each style reflects cultural and religious needs, using specific aspects of each church to demonstrate those needs. So this is the Hagia Sophia, located in Istanbul. It is a central plan church, part of the Greek Orthodox style from the Byzantine period. I would encourage you to look up other images of it so you can see the interior. There are thousands and thousands of images of the Hagia Sophia online. And then Chartres Cathedral, which is a Gothic style of church. It is one of the biggest Gothic cathedrals. And again, look at the images of the inside, look at the images up close of the exterior. Make sure that you're really seeing as much about this church as possible. So you're comparing the Byzantine style of church decoration to the Gothic style of church decoration. Next up, compare Hieronymus Bosch's triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delight, to Michelangelo's Last Judgment. Examine each artist's approach to God's judgment of mankind and explore how their images are reflective of religious and Renaissance values in Northern Europe and Italy. So this is The Garden of Earthly Delights, and you can't even see the whole thing in this particular version, but a triptych is a 3-panel painting. So they kind of move chronologically from left to right. So first here, then the large center panel, and then this one on the far right here. So you're comparing what's happening in this image, which I'm telling you has to do with the Last Judgment, to this version by Michelangelo. So both of these are painted in the Renaissance. One is an Italian Renaissance piece, that's Michelangelo. The other is from the Northern Renaissance, that's Bosch. So you're kind of comparing their two approaches to a similar story. And finally, compare Rosa Bonheur's Ploughing of the Nivernais, Dressing of the Vines, with Gustave Courbet's The Stonebreakers. Each image is an example of French realism, highlighting the working class. Explore the different way each artist does this, noting the distinctions in their style, their subject matter and styles. So this is the Ploughing of the Nivernais, Dressing of the Vines by Rosa Bonheur. She primarily paints animals, and yet is considered a realist. So talk about what it is she's doing in her images, what her approach to realism is, and then compare it to Gustave Courbet's The Stonebreakers, which is pictured here. This image does not exist any longer, so all we have are photographs that were taken before it was destroyed. So the quality will never be amazing, but you can get some pretty good quality images on the internet of it. And you're comparing just essentially their two different approaches to realism. If you have any additional questions, please reach out. As always, I cannot help you if I don't know that there's a problem. You will be required to have meetings with me, but if you need help before that, please don't hesitate to reach out and make sure you're taking advantage of my biweekly office hours if needed.